The studio lights burned bright, flooding the set of the Carter Hour with a golden glow. It was one of the most watched talk shows in America, and tonight the air crackled with tension. J.D. Vance, freshly inaugurated as vice president, stepped onto the stage with the calm, measured confidence of a man who had nothing to hide, but everything to prove. Across from him, Ethan Carter, the sharp-witted host known for tearing apart his guests, sat waiting. Carter had promised a fair conversation about the new administration, but the flicker in his eyes told a different story. As Vance settled into his chair, the usual pre-show small talk felt forced. Carter's smile was polite, but his fingers gripped his cue cards a little too tightly. The production crew exchanged glances. Something was off. Vance, a former Marine, had spent years learning to read people. Right now, every instinct told him an ambush was coming. He braced himself. Carter's first question was sugar-coated, but the intent was clear. "Mr. Vice President," he began smoothly, "let's talk about your transformation from a Trump critic to his second-in-command. Some might call that convenient." Vance smiled, unfazed. "Ethan, that's actually a great place to start, because it's about something bigger than just politics. It's about the ability to grow and understand." The audience leaned in. That wasn't the defensive response Carter had expected. He shifted in his chair. "Growth and understanding?" Carter's tone sharpened. "Is that what we're calling it now? Because to some, it looks like pure political ambition." Vance didn't flinch. "Ethan, in America, we have this incredible tradition. We change our minds when we see new evidence. Years ago, I criticised President Trump because I was looking through a narrow lens. But then I saw something remarkable. His policies were actually helping the very people I wrote about in my book. That changed everything for me." Carter hesitated for just a second, just long enough for Vance to press forward. "Let me ask you something, Ethan. Have you ever changed your mind about something important? Ever looked at the facts and realised you might have been wrong?" For the first time, Carter looked caught off guard. His jaw tightened. "We're here to talk about you, Mr. Vice President, not me," he deflected. The exchange continued, sharp, relentless. Carter pushed. Vance pushed back. "Let's talk about your recent speech at the National Prayer Breakfast," Carter said, his voice laced with skepticism. "You spoke about divine guidance in government decisions. Isn't that a dangerous mixing of church and state?" The air in the room shifted. The audience tensed. Vance leaned forward, his voice steady but firm. "Ethan, our founding fathers understood that faith wasn't the enemy. It was the foundation of moral leadership. They weren't afraid of religion. They were afraid of tyranny." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Carter glanced at his producer, who was watching intently. Vance continued, his tone more personal now. "When I was a Marine, nobody questioned the chaplain's presence. Nobody complained when we prayed before missions, because in those moments, even skeptics understood there's something bigger than politics at play." Carter pressed harder. "Your loyalty to Trump. Some might say you've become nothing more than his loyal puppet." The word hung in the air. A few audience members gasped. Vance didn't blink. "Ethan, that word, it tells me more about you than it does about me," he said, his voice calm but cutting. "In your world, loyalty is something to mock. In mine, it's a virtue. In the Marines, we judge a person's character by their actions, not by what the media says about them. I've seen President Trump's character firsthand, not the caricature you and your colleagues have created." The audience erupted in applause. Carter opened his mouth, but Vance wasn't finished. "You call it being a loyal puppet. I call it recognising true leadership when I see it. And yes, I'm proud to serve alongside President Trump." Carter leaned in, voice dripping with sarcasm. "So, you're his lapdog now?" Vance's eyes sharpened, but his voice remained steady. "Lapdog? No, Ethan, I'm a man who believes in loyalty, integrity, and standing by those who fight for the American people. If that makes me a lapdog in your eyes, then I wear that label with pride. The studio erupted. Applause drowned out Carter's next words. But Carter wasn't done. He took a deep breath, shifting tactics. Let's talk policy. The administration has been criticised for its stance on immigration. Many argue that your approach is too harsh, even cruel. How do you justify separating families at the border? Vance's jaw tightened slightly. Ethan, let's set the record straight. No one in this administration wants to see families torn apart. But let's also be honest. Unchecked illegal immigration leads to chaos. It hurts American workers, strains our social services, and puts national security at risk. Carter pounced. So, you're saying compassion has no place in immigration policy? Vance exhaled through his nose, his patience thinning. That's a false choice, Ethan. We can have compassion and enforce our laws at the same time. My own grandparents came to this country legally. They worked hard, played by the rules, and built a life here. That's the America I believe in. One where the law means something, where sovereignty isn't just a suggestion. Carter's smirk faltered. The audience was no longer fully on his side. Vance leaned forward. Ethan, let me ask you, would you leave your front door wide open every night? Would you let strangers walk in, take whatever they want, and expect no consequences? Carter hesitated. The metaphor was effective. That's not the same thing, he began, but Vance cut him off. It is the same thing. A nation without borders is no nation at all. We welcome legal immigrants with open arms, but we also have to protect our own citizens. That's not cruelty, that's common sense. Another wave of applause. Carter's expression darkened, but he forced a smile. The interview stretched on, covering foreign policy, economic recovery, and the role of government in everyday lives. With each question, Vance stood his ground, never raising his voice, never faltering. Carter, who had started the interview with fire in his eyes, now looked like a man struggling to land a decisive blow. By the time the show wrapped, the energy in the studio had shifted dramatically. What had begun as an attempted ambush had turned into a showcase of Vance's resilience and command of the issues. As the cameras cut, Carter exhaled, rubbing his temples. Well, Mr. Vice President, you certainly know how to handle yourself. Vance chuckled, standing up and buttoning his jacket. Years of debate team, Marine Corps training, and a little common sense. Carter extended a hand. I'll give you this. You're not easily rattled. Vance shook his hand firmly. That's because I stand by what I believe, Ethan. Maybe you should try it sometime. J.D. Vance's story is more than just a political exchange. It's about resilience, conviction, and standing firm in the face of adversity. The media's attempt to discredit him only reinforced his strength, proving that authenticity and integrity always outshine empty attacks. More than that, it serves as a reminder that independent thinking takes courage. In a world where narratives are often shaped by those in power, Vance's journey teaches us a vital lesson. The truth has a way of prevailing, and those who stand by it will always earn the respect of the people. If you enjoyed the story and found it meaningful, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you. Share your thoughts and the lessons you've learned in the comments below. Your insights could inspire someone